Yes, implementation is a very important topic. Maybe I should say that. As you might have realized, I was given 1 hour in total, contrary to 45 minutes presentation time to the yesterday's presentation, just because of the importance of the topic. So what I will try to do is today is giving you some information about implementation, what I do understand from implementation and how it has been practiced to some extent, because in 45 minutes, it's not possible to cover the importance and the practice of implementation research. But we will do a kind of brainstorming practice. And also, I would like to give you a different perspective, because I've been thinking about this, how I could compete the wonderful 2 presentations of yesterday. Andy was great motivational talk, and he touched upon very, very important things and gave us very good messages. And Paddy was very thorough, combined both scientific rigor and enthusiasm and excitement. So what will be my take on and give you a different experience. So as usual, I will try to be a bit skeptical in my presentation. So this doesn't mean that I am a skeptical person. I love science, and I'm proud of being a scientist, a researcher. I think this is the future. But as part of my profession, I would like to be skeptical, sometimes cynical, about what we are doing, because this is the way, in my belief, almost like a religion. I don't give it up, whatever you say. This is the way to make progress and make improvements. And I'll try to give a couple of examples where we can be skeptical to make strong criticisms of our own work. Why is that so? Because in my short experience of academic life, I realized that our work is involving a lot of ego. So we researchers, regardless of our good intentions, capacities, what we have been doing, and the touch to the people that we are working for and with, we have a lot of ego at the same time. And this is the nature of academic work, because we are using our intellectual capacity, and we are thinking through, we are trying to find new ways, new things. This is, I think, training us to be a bit egoistic about what we are doing. And then after a while, we fall in love with what we are doing, particularly about our own research topic, and we start thinking about, oh, this is the most important thing, and this is the best thing ever. I think we need to give a pause every time we feel in this way, and then try to be a bit skeptical about what is really going on in our field. So this is the goal of my presentation. And a warning sign: if I start coughing, you don't have to run away from the room. I don't have COVID. I have pharyngitis. I love talking. I cannot stop myself. Even though I may start coughing, I will try to get a sip of water and then another candy to my mouth, and then we'll continue. Okay, don't be afraid. So what I talk about when I talk about implementation, taken from Murakami, one of my favorite authors. So what we talk about, really, when we say implementation, what kind of words or what kind of issues that keeps coming to your mind? Excuse me?
The procedure of something?
In the procedure, in the research, in practice, or what implementation research deals with, if you have an idea. So it's a very difficult question to answer. One reason for that is, even though we know a beautiful definition for implementation science, and some of my colleagues are very much eager to promote this new breed of science, implementation science. One reason why we cannot really give a quick answer to this question is because it's not established yet. It's not well established. It has not established itself as a discipline. So I'm skeptical about defining new terminologies, coining new terminologies, and then trying to promote these kind of things. Yes, implementation is really important. We have known this from tons of research, but calling this as a science, I think this is a bit overrated. So according to this definition, implementation science refers to the use of systematic data collection and research methods to enhance the dissemination and sustainment of evidence-based practices into routine operations. That sounds perfect. But at the same time, it is full of an assumption. I think I need to synchronize this. Yeah. There is one strong assumption here. And what could be the assumption that might be misleading us? Can you think of any assumption that is hidden in this definition? So implementation science is dealing with this phenomena of their interest to enhance the dissemination and sustainment of evidence-based practices into routine operations. There is a hidden assumption that we already have well-established, strong practices that we are very much sure about, so that we can take everything to another level and study and call this as implementation science. So without having strong practices that has proven in multiple occasions, in multiple contexts, across multiple studies by independent researchers, it's not really possible to develop full confidence that we have something in our hand. Yes, we should be proud of what we are doing. Yesterday we have listened to very good presentations, new ideas, and today we will continue, and tomorrow. There are tons of new ideas, new programs, but what I see among the research community is that there is a great ambition to take everything upscale. Yes, if we do this, the definition of implementation science gives us a very good meaning. So it could be very useful to frame our way of studying our topic. And we can develop our idea based on the propositions that is available and written in a very eloquent language. And then we can try to do something. But if you don't have a good product that you can sell, that you can deliver to people, implement in normal practices and study, so what are you going to study to begin with? If you're not really sure about the quality of the program that you are working with, how we are going to make the judgment that implementation needs to be studied at this level in order to understand how, in the best possible way, we can deliver this program. So this sounds like driving a crappy car on highway at 120 kilometers per hour.
And maybe there is another thing that sounds strange to me is the idea of routine operations.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible, out of the field, trying to do routine operations.
Exactly. So
I think with something that you do in a planning way, in a flexible way, taking into account the context, given those things flourishing in the context that you have to apply. So it's out of
absolutely, absolutely. So these are, I'm trying to warn you about the potential danger of these terminologies, because this is where the field is moving forward. And it's often, as researchers, when we are trying to find out where we should be doing research, what should be our focus of interest, then we look into up-to-date literature and then try to gather ideas. And what is trendy is very much influential on our decision. So we need to be very aware of this and skeptical about what will be the use of these new approaches, terminologies, the new terms that has been recently coined for our purpose. So one important assumption that concerns me is that this is assuming that, okay, we have done enough with producing very effective programs, and now this we can take it to a different level and we study how we can best integrate this into the service systems, whether in social welfare, in school system, whatever you call. Now, let's look into what do we have in terms of, oops, sorry. in terms of parenting programs. So the blueprints, you might know about this. This is a well-established repository for effective programs. They have been implementing a very thorough assessment of the evaluation studies and gather a lot of information regarding how the programs have been developed, the evidence available about the programs, where do these evidence comes from, for which groups, under what conditions, etc. They ask a lot of different questions and want to see the documentation. And it takes about anything from 6 months to 2 years. They evaluate and then rate the program that you are trying to promote as a model program or promising program. So when you search for the parent training program, which is one of the abundant type of program in other fields, there are, in some of the fields, there are more programs like drug use, misuse programs, etc. But in most of the other fields that you can select, there are fewer programs. So we are doing quite good in terms of parent training. But as you see, there are only 5 model programs. So these are the established programs that has been shown to be effective across different contexts by different researchers. And there are 20 promising programs. I think we are in good shape, definitely. Now, I would like to ask you this next question. So yesterday, we heard about Incredible Years and Triple P, and probably you also know.
It's a surprise.
Okay. I thought something is coming. Maybe they all heard me and then wanted to listen. Okay. Nothing really important. So, and Strengthening Families is another program which is, as far as I know, is also common in Spain and across the world. So what do you think about these programs? Do you think, are they model programs or promising programs? Do you have any knowledge about that? More or less, we probably all know some about these programs and love these programs. We appreciate the people who developed over the years. They are strong programs. There are tons of studies on these programs. They've been tested across many different places across time with short and long-term evaluations. What will be your judgment? Are they model programs or promising programs? You can go and check. They are. Yes, Triple P is promising, and Strengthening Families, one of the oldest one among the 3, is promising, and Incredible Years is also promising. So these are commonly used programs. These are strong programs, and they are yet to be a model program. So they have not achieved that level. And one reason is that they still have weaknesses. They still have weaknesses in the evaluation studies. They still have unexplained variation across studies in the effectiveness results. And also there are limited amount of information about the implementation context. So under what conditions these programs are the most effective. And some of these programs, even though they have been used with great pride and hope, we still have very, very limited information about the process of change, which is one of the most essential thing about programs. If you don't know what the process of change is, whether this is consistent with the theory of the program, this is just a black box. So we are just flipping a coin when we implement a program. We just hope that it's going to be just effective as some colleagues in Spain have found it, and then we suddenly realized that, oh, it didn't work, like Strengthening Families program. It didn't work in Sweden. And Carol Comfort was super angry about that. So Carol Comfort, who developed Strengthening Families program, get out the first publication in 1983, 40 years ago. I was a little child by then. So in 1983, since then, she built up her career and personal life, the whole ambition upon this program. She primarily has done everything about strengthening families in her life and distributed the program, studied the program, promoted the program in many different ways, and has done pretty much everything. And she's a person with great pride. I think that she's right. It's well earned, but at the same time, she is a very protective person about her program. At one occasion, when I had the opportunity to talk to her, I asked how she made it happen, because this is a great success story. I want to understand what was the key. So she gave me a lot of key points, that consistency, and then this working with great researchers, using up to standard evaluation strategies, etc., etc., etc. By the very end, she said, but above all, the most important thing is knowing the people, personal relationships. Okay, so what is really scientific about interpersonal relationships when you are promoting a program for its success? Your convincing power is very high, but you might convince people to adapt programs that are not that effective if you are super good in this business. Like Project DARE, for example, a drug abuse prevention program from United States. It has been implemented internationally in so many countries, all over US as well. And we already know that there are iatrogenic effects of the program, let alone it's not effective across multiple studies. There are some iatrogenic effects, but it's still being used, and it's still admired in some circles, because these people behind the project there is very effective in distributing this program. It's a very simple message. You take out the police officers' schools in front of students, and they talk about drugs and use some scare tactics. It's rather easy to implement as well. But sometimes when we think about these kind of practices, we should question, okay, what is the background of this program? What evidence do we have? Yes, it might be rated by Blueprints as a promising program, but what does it really mean? What limits the ability of these programs to be rated as a model program? So what is lacking? And when we ask these kind of questions, we may get a bit more understanding. But this why question has been bothering me a lot. So why Strengthening Families program, for example, it has been used for over 40 years. Over this time, there has been a lot of accumulated knowledge about the program, why its effectiveness has not been gradually increasing. When this program is adapted into a new context, it could be a broad international context, or it could be in the United States, usually we see a lot of variations compared to the original implementation of the study. So what could be one of the reasons that might lead to this variation? So under normal conditions, if we are putting a lot of effort and resources on one issue, we should be making gradual progress. And this is what science is. So we are dropping a little piece of water, very little drop, to a big lake. And over the years and years, it's going to become a bigger lake. So this is the idea of doing science. So we are not solving the puzzle in our lifetime, maybe. So I think this is quite unrealistic to think about. But we are just adding new pieces. But the idea is that every time we add a new piece of knowledge, things should progress and move forward. Why we are not able to do this? Developed in '83, used in 50 states in the US and around 40 countries. If you think about what engineers have been doing, so Andy might be angry with me, because yes, we are not dealing with cars, we are not dealing with engineered stuff. So we are not engineers, but we are scientists. I think it's right to ask these kind of questions occasionally. So in 1983, this Volkswagen Golf was burning about 10-liter gas in 100 kilometers. And currently, this 2021 model, it's burning about 4 to 5 liters of gas. So they cut it down by half. So what's wrong with us as social scientists or prevention researchers? why we were not able to increase the effectiveness of incredible years of strengthening families program or triple P by 25%?
Because social technology is a little bit more complicated than engineering.
Yes, we cannot maybe compare the amount of resources. Definitely, I totally agree. We don't get, yeah, I cannot even say a good number, but this maybe we get only about 1% of what resources they have access to. But there should be still more that we could do. So we might not achieve this kind of improvements because the improvement in these two cars in 40 years is not only about the amount of emission. So it's also about safety, the comfort, and many other qualities has been improving constantly. But we are a large network of researchers from psychology, social work, educational sciences, policy. We have been working towards the same goal, more or less, and why we have not been achieving this goal. One of the reasons is probably we have not been trying to achieve this goal in a concentrated manner. So it's like an orchestra. To build up a very beautiful music, the orchestra, every pieces should play together at the same time and they should complement each other. Probably we have not been doing this very well. And these initiations like COST, EurofamNet, I think this is one step forward to this kind of progress. So in the future, hopefully with these kind of platforms bringing people from very different disciplines together is going to make great changes in our field. But what else might hinder our progression? Could it be that we have been using the wrong strategy again and again, or not wrong maybe this, but ineffective strategy again and again? One of the things that was driving this improvement in gas consumption is the government regulations. Now by 2035, we are going to see many more electric-driven cars on the street because there is a government mandate and the businesses are moving towards that. If there were no regulation, if there were no standards of this business for safety measures, for example, if there were no regulations for emission, then probably these cars were not going to be looking in the very same way. Maybe they are going to be evolved into muscle car. They were going to burn a lot of gas, drive more faster, but they are not going to be much efficient. So the standards makes a huge difference, and we are taking baby steps to establish the standards in our field. So in EurofamNet as well, it's like we are working with some quality standards for both practice and research. I hope this in the future, these kind of practices are going to lead way to making greater improvement. Only if, as future researchers, take these standards very seriously and try to make improvements every time we implement a new program, every time we work with a new idea. If we set the standard very clearly and set the goals, what we want to achieve, then probably we are not going to replicate each other in multiple occasions independently, but we are going to work all together towards improvement in what we are doing. And probably this is one of the key to convince the policymakers, decision makers in a much stronger way. Because imagine talking about the programs that we have improved in X amount of years in terms of effectiveness, impact, cost efficiency, ease of implementation. When we document this kind of information in front of people, wouldn't that be more effective? Because nowadays, what I see in my practice, I've been developing an intervention for the newly arrived immigrants and refugees in Sweden by using a very different approach. Rather than focusing on their deficiencies, mental health issues, we develop a different perspective to instill them more hope about their future and just push them forward and relying more on their own resource that they bring in already from their countries. So every time I talk about these programs to a practitioner, then they are asking me, okay, how this is going to be compared to parenting science in Sweden. So there is one program that has been used commonly in Swedish neighborhoods, in communities. So they want to see in what ways this program is going to be easier. One of the issues that they are complaining about the existing program is the cost. For example, they are asking, okay, are you going to cut the cost in your new program? And of course, they are also concerned about the ease of implementation. They're asking me, is this going to be easier? So is this going to bring me less burden to myself as a manager of this place and also to the employees, to the staff members who are going to implement this program? So these are very important questions people are very much concerned about. And when we tap onto these kind of issues, that what we can promise to the people, I think the field is going to be much more effective. But let's go back to our approach, what we have been doing to develop very good, very effective programs. So I picked my example from Unplugged, assuming that none of us have been working with Unplugged, so nothing is going to be personal, and something naive for everyone. And also because drug prevention research is, to be honest, is much more developed than parent interventions, because there has been more funding in the field at the European level and also this in the North American context, and there has been many more research. So this Unplugged program, which was funded by the Horizon, one of the Horizon grants, that was very well funded. They've done a very thorough evaluation of what exists before they proposed their own program. So they reviewed all the available RCT studies on substance use that exist in Europe and all over the world. And they set certain criteria. So they should not be only RCT, but high quality RCT with limited iteration, compromisation of the design, and a minimum effect size level. So they didn't consider the RCTs, which reveal small effect sizes, but they only looked into moderate to high effect sizes. I think it's a very, very strong criteria to begin with. And they examined the content of these studies, and they identified the effective components. So they looked into what makes these programs effective and developed a new program based on these components of the effective, already proven strategies. And they called this Unplugged. They implemented this program almost close to 20 European countries using RCT design. They evaluated. In school context, it has been implemented. Implementation quality was rather high, according to their data. And give me a guess about the effectiveness rate of this program. So this is an exemplary strategy for developing effective programs in our field as well. So what do you think about the effectiveness of the Unplugged program? Absolutely.
Since it was a Horizon project, until the funding was available, it went very good. But after that, I don't know. I don't know if it was popularized, or does it share the destiny of many Horizon projects?
Mm-hmm. They've been working really hard to disseminate the program, and in some places they were able to do that.
I'm just guessing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, give me one more word about the effectiveness of the program. What do you think about the effectiveness of the Unplugged program? It wasn't even close to the program that they have used as a model with the least effectiveness. That is a very frustrating situation. It is an extremely frustrating situation. Myself and one of my colleagues were approached to look into their data, and we did lots of analysis to understand what and in what way we could explain the results. And we looked into the process of change. Surprisingly, the results were showing that out of so many effective proven strategies that they have integrated in the program, many of them did not work as a mediator of the change process. It's a very puzzling situation. What could have went wrong? It could be many different things, but one of the things is actually lack of understanding. So we should be very bold about that. So we should question, okay, so let's go back a couple steps and then think about from a different angle. Have we done something wrong? I think we did. And one reason for that wrong is this. These researchers are very competent, well-intended researchers with great knowledge about program theory. They know their work. I have full respect to each one of them. And they build up the program theory in a very good way. So this is the way that we should go, right? So they identify the program components with a very clear statement of how these program components are going to affect the risks and the mediating mechanisms. They are all evidence-based. And then they have clear ideas about how these risk and mediating mechanisms were going to be related to the changes in the outcome of interest. And that is also evidence-based. So when you read the papers, reports, you are very much convinced. But one thing that we forget often is we are not dealing with one theory when we are evaluating programs. When we are building up and evaluating programs, we are actually dealing with two different types of theories. One is action theory. And the action theory is dealing with how the activities within the program are going to lead to changes in the risks and the mediating mechanisms. And ask yourself this question. So we gather a group of parents or do a home visitation, and we engage in certain types of activities. Most of the time, we use our gut feeling or the practices that we learn from other colleagues or the best practices, and then we just use these strategies in our program with the hope that we will have impact on the mediating mechanisms and the risk factors. So we are going to make changes in that. Obviously, that's what we learned from Patty's presentation. One of the things that they have tried, it was a very genuine idea, praise. So they used the idea that has been promoted in multiple contexts. They used the praise in a very specific way, but it didn't work. The findings have shown that, yes, it didn't work. The other type of praise, very general, broad praise, was effective. We, in the field of research, we like this kind of information. So gathering people together with different needs, with different expectations, is that an effective strategy? We don't really know. Talking to people in a certain way, giving certain types of messages, is this the best strategy that we can ever use? We don't really know. I'm working with immigrant families and children. Using their native language to deliver the program, is that the best strategy? Or using a translator, interpreter to be more inclusive? Which one is best? We honestly do not know. And unfortunately, the problem is we are not testing these kind of questions. We are not testing how we can deliver the program, the package to the people, and what will be the effects of alternative methods of delivering this package. In addition to that, we have another problem with the conceptual theory. So the conceptual theory is dealing with the relationship between risk and mediating mechanisms and the changes in the problem. So we have theoretical ideas coming from attachment theory, social learning theory, et cetera, which is suggesting us and convincing us very strongly that, okay, so if we make changes here and there, then this is going to lead to the result. We have been, in our university, we have been running a prevention science master's program. And I was chairing this program for some time. So it doesn't exist for financial reasons, unfortunately. But one of the things that I love to do in this program was giving this task to students as one of their major assignment. So they were spending one full semester on this task. They pick up one of the effective programs from the blueprint list, either model program or promising program, and they were asked, okay, go into the literature, search for the studies, and identify the studies that are showing robust evidence with respect to the link between these risks and mediating mechanisms and the outcomes. Just studies, but we had a hierarchy. Experimental studies, RCTs, longitudinal studies, and going down to the ALE, down to correlational studies. And what they have been finding. By the end of the semester, unfortunately, I've been just listening to their frustration over frustration and over frustration. They were not able to find high-quality studies showing that, yes, experimental studies, RCTs, robust test of these change processes, they don't exist. We have very limited information, but the vast majority of the information about our convictions are coming from the correlational studies or poorly conducted longitudinal studies. So we are in deep trouble because of that reason. So we are just operating under assumptions without being critical about what we are doing. But we still have hope. Yesterday, in our discussion table, Maria Jose said something very important. She said, I always go from basic research to intervention. This is the key. This is absolutely the key. One very important information for you. When we worked with developing this program for the newly arrived families, we had gathered a group of experts and talked to people this. I talked to people this. So I've been working with these groups in person and try to understand what are the needs of these people, what kind of information they should be given, what are the challenges that they are experiencing with their young children, adolescent child. And one strong idea came up about sexual education. So most of the immigrants that we were targeting are coming from East of Europe. And there is this common understanding that the traditions, the religious background, the cultural issues, conservatism, they are not fitting in very well into the Swedish context. And because of that reason, these parents are experiencing a lot of challenges, and the youth are experiencing a lot of challenges. Because parents are restricted, they want to maintain their cultural origin, and maybe the religious background also have influences, but the youth are living in a different context, so this is creating a lot of stress. And of course, in Sweden, unfortunately, there has been several cases of honor killing. So honor killing is killing a young woman because she was involved in sexual relationship with another person outside the marriage relationship or in a relationship that is not approved by the family. So there has been cases of such. That's why there's a very big public concern that this could be repeated. It's a very important issue. I totally agree. And then when we start talking to our reference group, we realize that the reference group are the people that's coming from these communities. They had different concerns. They had different ideas. They were talking about different challenges. And then we did interviews with the youth and the families to understand what their challenges are in their daily life and what kind of strengths that they have, what kind of resources that they have to handle these challenges. What we found was there was no mentioning of these issues by the parents, but they were concerned about the education of their children. They were concerned about their children's establishment as a person, as an individual in this new society. And they were quite okay talking about sexual issues. And some of the parents said, we don't have any problem. I talk to my children. That was our assumption. That was our wrong assumption. Like, imagine if I had implemented the program, including this component, and tried to give this message to parents, okay, because where you are coming from, you are concerned about these kind of issues. But here in Sweden, we are open about these things. what would you think as a parent? And by the end, what we have been hearing from our target group is that they felt that they were listened, and they were listened about very relevant topics to their life. So parents really appreciate the content of our program, which was skipping this very important topic according to some practitioners and some researchers as well. So if we had done the implementation, including this component, probably we were not going to do anything wrong with the implementation process. We were going to be very gentle and proper in our discourse. But because there was something wrong within the content, something not relevant, something that might hurt the feelings of the people, that was not going to be taken in a good way. That's why we cannot really separate these issues from each other. This is the wholeness that we need to focus on. So action theory, conceptual theory, how the program is designed as a package, how the process of change has been construed, and how it's being implemented. They are all part of the big wholeness, which makes our programs a failure or a success. Most of the time, we see this great separation, isolation in our field. Implementation research goes in one direction, outcome evaluation goes in another direction, and sometimes into different journals as well. There are very good researchers who are very skilled in outcome evaluations. They don't want to get into implementation questions unless the trend is requiring to get into some kind of assessment of the fidelity of the programs and linking these fidelity indicators to outcomes. But we shall not let ourselves be slave of these ideas and trends. We should see this wholeness. These are not isolated issues. Okay, so what we typically evaluate in our studies, even though we are dealing with the program, which is much larger than these links, we are dealing with whether the program is having an impact on problem, the target focus, or risk and mediating mechanisms. Sometimes we even call them as primary outcomes and secondary outcomes. I think that's a very funny and improper terminology, because what is really immediate outcome, that's how we can call the immediate outcome as a secondary outcome. So we are just degrading the importance of the risk and mediating factors and just focusing on, okay, we should try to demonstrate that our program is effective in the conduct disorder of the child without expecting that, okay, it's a secondary outcome. So using this praise, reward, or other types of things, they are just secondary in importance. No, it's not the case. So we should be able to understand first whether our program has impact on the risk and mediating mechanisms, and then leads to changes in the outcome. So basically, what we do is, in the field, regardless of whether we are only focusing on the outcome of the programs, or we are testing this very elegant mediation models, moderation models, we are still occupied with the outcomes of the programs. When we call evidence-based programs, every time we talk about evidence-based program, we are referring to, knowingly, unknowingly, to the outcome evidence. But evidence is very much needed for all process. So what is the evidence for the underlying theory? And with evidence, I don't mean only evidence showing the promise. We also need to consider the potential iatrogenic effects. So what may happen, for example, when we supervise parents to monitor their children, what may happen to the child, how parent may practice these monitoring behaviors towards the child, and what will be the potential positive outcomes, what could be the potential negative outcomes. How we can prevent some parents receiving this message as being overly controlling, intrusive, strict. There is a vast majority of research showing that these kind of practices are very harmful, especially during the adolescence period when children need greater autonomy. But supervision is also very important because we should not, as parents, let the children be alone outside. So there needs to be some level of supervision monitoring, but there is a fine line between the positive practice of the supervision and the negative outcomes, potential iatrogenic outcomes. Then we are surprised when we find iatrogenic outcomes of our program. But we should start from the theory and the empirical research that gives our idea that why the program should include these kind of components, right? If we are not concerned about the evidence regarding the underlying program theory, then probably we are going to develop the wrong package. The program content is not going to fit really well to the purpose. And then implementation needs to be evidence-based because we oftentimes do not really know which practices or implementation program delivery is the most effective relative to alternative technologies. Now there's a great trend of using computer technology, digital technologies to deliver programs. It's a very important technology. I'm going to do that in my own program as well to be able to reach out, but we are going to test it. We are going to test whether this mode of intervention is equally effective as the face-to-face intervention. And we will test the programs to see if delivery by a younger person versus older person, if they are equally effective, or one approach is more effective, or delivering the program in their native language versus Swedish is the most effective strategy. Without testing these kind of questions, which are essential to high-quality implementation, we cannot really answer whether we are doing really right and we are going to make progress in our endeavor. And outcomes, we are already concerned about the quality. And the important thing is that they are all linked to each other. They are not isolated from each other. Without having strong theory backed up by very strong evidence, you cannot develop a very good content for your program. Without good content, you cannot implement it in a nice way because the program is going to give wrong messages to the parents and it's not going to be received. And sometimes the participation rate is declining in programs. One of my colleagues who expressed her feelings of frustration about her program, which was quite nice, well taught, but she has been feeling that because of this funding agencies, requirements, etc., and this the current trends, she included some aspects into the program. But some of the parents find this very intimidating and they just drop out after the first meeting. What is that? That is the message that they are given to the parents. Okay, we are here to become this way. So it's a well-intended message, but it's harming people's feeling. So how we can keep people within the program is one of the most important concerns we have. And sometimes we might just discourage people's attendance by including certain messages within our program with all our good intention. Without testing, can we know it? No. Or without putting together these anecdotal information in a very systematic way, we cannot, again, know these kind of intricate situations. So if you think about what is important for successful implementation, okay, who in the group do not have any headache or pain in life? So probably this, we all have some sort of pain. And painkillers, there are plenty of them available, very effective. If you are concerned about whether you are using the right painkiller, you need to look into many different things. So this is a very simple act of getting a painkiller to deal with your headache. What kind of pain you have? If it's migraines, light pain, back or the neck or on the side. So your age, and do you have other health complications? Allergies to the active substance or this medication, any other medication, sorry, not mediation. And how many pills you should get in a day, how often you should get. Should that be before or after meal or with the meal? And should you swallow it, chew it, dissolve it in the water and drink it? So there are so many different aspects that we should be concerned about, right? And this is a very simple action. Like this is just a pill, and we have very robust evidence that this is effective. So there is an explained mechanism of its effect. We know what we are doing, so there is no ambiguity in it. So we don't have ambiguities like the ones we have in our interventions. And we need to ask these kind of questions to be able to get the right pill to deal with our pain in the most effective way. But when we are doing more complicated things, like our interventions, then we sometimes ignore some of the issues. So the standards, the practices, which is the most important key, the quality standards document that we have been working is we defined these 4 areas within a cycle of program. So it could be defined in many different ways, but we want to be a bit more global in these phases. So first, program formulation, and there are multiple steps of the program formulation and different qualities that we need to deal with. And the program delivery, evaluation, and dissemination. So these are different phases that we deal with. And mostly, what I am concerned about the implementation is the program delivery phase. The implementation science or the broader implementation research is also concerned about other facts. And this is rightful because program formulation might be accomplished in many different ways, including informants, not including them, there's the building up collaboration or using a bottom-up approach versus top-down processes. So there are many different alternatives we can think about, but we don't have much idea about which one is the most effective one. So we can think that, and there's a great community of researchers who are proponents of the bottom-up approach in order to increase the reception of the program. But also there are wonderful examples that sometimes top-down approach is the most effective. So child abuse, there are so many programs dealing with child abuse. Which child abuse prevention program is the most effective in the world? Yes, absolutely. So in Sweden, the government decided that they need to put some emphasis in 1960s, and they promoted discussion in public. So experts started discussing this issue on radio, media, newspapers, TV, and they raised some public opinion. And at one level, they just passed the law. And the next day, you are not able to hit your child. Otherwise, your child may be taken from yourself. But they informed very well about the consequences of hitting a child. They informed very well about the consequences of this law when it's in effect, what might happen, because they established the system and the social work system, social workers were ready, well informed, social services were well prepared with all the regulations and everything. Of course, things went wrong in 1980s. Relative to population size, Sweden was the country where many more kids were taken from families to foster care because they were violating this law. But then things start settling down, and you don't see anyone in the street or in the park raising their voice to their children. So it has a massive spillover effect as well. Not only on slapping, but also how kids are treated in the school context, within the family context, outside. It works really well. So the implementation questions, working with the programs of our kind, we can pose many different questions, of course. And just some of these questions, the important ones. Does the program meet the needs of families and communities? And how to secure buy-in from key stakeholders? What training and supervision are needed for implementation workforce? How can parenting programs be integrated in existing infrastructure, and what aspects are critical to success of the implementation? And overall, most of these questions are merging into one direction. So we try to understand what works for whom and under what circumstances, not only in a context or for groups of families, but under what circumstances of the delivery of the program. If you deliver the program in school context using a certain workforce through a certain type of training, whether it's becoming the most effective or not that effective. So these are the overall questions that we are handling. But most of the focus has been on the fidelity in our practice of implementation research. So we are very much concerned about adherence to the manual, the fidelity, integrity of the program implementation. They're all referring to more or less the same concept. So there has been efforts to improve this framework. So one framework that has been proposed to improve the implementation research is this model by Burkle et al. Irvin Sandler is also one of the persons best backing this idea. We used in one of the studies that we have done also. It works fine in terms of giving us a framework for assessing the implementation in program evaluation, the process evaluation, and also for the analysis. So this is dealing with certain different issues like differentiation, dosage, reach, monitoring, fidelity of the program, quality of the implementation, adaptation process, whether there has been small or major adaptations during the implementation phase, and responsiveness of the parents. So what we are measuring most of the cases, it is usually dosage, responsiveness of the parents to the program, and certain issues like monitoring this, whether we provide supervision or not. But there are, of course, in this framework, there are missing issues like preparation to the implementation team. So how much we put effort to prepare the intervention leaders, how we train them. When I was working with developing our own training for the programs that we have been working with, I looked into the literature to find some good ideas about how well we can improve the training. I couldn't find anything. There are isolated cases, isolated reports about how much training has been attended, the number of hours, etc., and certain kind of practice, whether online or offline practices. But there is no good collection of information, which is tremendously important. Why it's important? Because we know from very strong evidence that has been replicated multiple times that the preparation of the intervention leader is probably one of the most effective, most important ingredient for program success. And this is one of the reasons why efficacy studies are often the most effective, because the researcher who developed the program is implementing with full ambition, enthusiasm, involvement, under control. And when we take it to effectiveness studies, things are getting worse. And when we take it to scale, we most of the time do not know what's really happening. And research has shown that, for example, in school context, teachers are often used as intervention staff. About 41 to 84% of the teachers start deviating from the program manual very quickly. And that happens very, very quickly. Okay. So when we talk about implementation and assess the implementation, oftentimes in the studies that we want to see is whether this implementation process or the program has been in high quality or not in high quality. It's by looking into certain types of indicators. But we should also know that there are variations in implementation. So it's not all or none phenomena. So there are always variations across groups, across contexts, across the intervention leaders. So these kind of variations, without taking them into account and integrating them in our studies and assessing them in a proper way to begin with, we cannot really improve this field of research. And what kind of variations may impact the quality of the implementation? That is also not known very much. So we know that the variations, such as dropping off some key ingredients of programs, is very dangerous for the effectiveness of the program. Yes, we know that. And think about this question. Where do you know that? How much research we have which disentangled different components of programs and tested them effectively so that we have a full understanding of what components of each program, like Incredible Years program, is the most effective. So it's a social learning program. It's based on homeworks. So parents are given certain strategies, and they are encouraged to complete some homework, some assignments. When we look into the rate of completion of these assignments, there's a huge variation. In the national evaluation study, where we evaluated 4 different programs at the same time, we had this great opportunity to look into what are the main ingredients of these programs to some extent. Unfortunately, we were not able to publish these studies for irrelevant reasons here. I'm not going to get into that detail. But one of the things that is really interesting to find out is in Incredible Years program, the most important ingredients have not been working. So these homeworks, the reward, the ideas that has been proposed, they were not being affected by the program. And if there is an effect in certain subgroups, they were not explaining the changes in the outcomes. But one of the consistent factors which seems to be explaining these effects in learning-based programs and attachment-based programs like Connect was the reduction in parental stress. So these programs do not intend to reduce parental stress. They are not designed to deal with parents' mental health. But obviously, according to these analyses, we found that the programs have been achieving, for unknown reasons, some level of reduction in parental stress, and to the extent that parental stress has been reduced, the programs being most effective for children, based on both parent report and child report, interestingly. So isn't that fascinating? So why is this so? These are not surprising things. These are because of the limitations of our research field, because we have been overlooking certain issues, because we have not been skeptical enough about what we have been doing. I'm not going to take much time from this point on, but a couple things that are important to remember. What may happen if we implement a program in poor quality? If we implement a program in poor quality without understanding whether the implementation was proper, we cannot really confidently determine the link between program exposure and outcome. So we cannot make any judgment about the internal validity of the program. We cannot expect and replicate the program effects in other settings. So we cannot assume that the program will have some external validity. We cannot determine how and why the program has worked. So this is all about construct validity. And the variability in the implementation may result in biased estimates of the program outcome. Sometimes it might be possible to find the overall evaluation showing us that the program has been effective, but maybe it's not the case. There's a great variation between some subgroups, and some large effects in subgroups has been leading to these effects, but not for many of the parents. And this is about statistical conclusion validity. So without understanding implementation process, without assessing and integrating into our studies, we cannot reach any conclusion regarding these validity issues. And they are the most essential issues that we learned in our basic scientific research method. But we forget them very quickly in practice. We never talk about these kind of issues, almost never in our publications. We just want to get out good publications with significant results. And this is one of the main problem in our field. So why we are not learning about from our experiences? Because we are not publishing non-significant findings. So in chemistry and physics, great majority of the publications are reporting non-significant findings, contrary to our field. The great majority of the publications are reporting only significant findings. It's not because we are less proficient in research. Like about Incredible Year, there are hundreds of studies, but there are thousands of studies that has not been published. And there are data that has not been published, like in the National Evaluation Study, for example. We have the most beautiful design of study, which is evaluating using a randomized control design 4 programs at the same time with long-term outcome assessment up to 2 years. but we are not publishing. We are not publishing these counter arguments to the assumptions. We are not publishing these data in an effective way, and we do this all the time. So of course, all these things are creating the problem for the progression of our field. So this is the message that I would like to give overall. What I can tell you about as a final word is about the importance of implementation. Yes, it's important, but how we should measure, how we should assess, can we set standards? Yes, we are aiming to set some standards, but these standards are not going to be more than guiding principles because each program context is different, each target group is different, each group that has been used as change agents are different from each other, and then we cannot prescribe single well-functioning measures to this great variation of our work. But we should be just concerned that we should use good measures, test psychometric qualities of these measures, collect data from multiple sources, triangulate different methodologies, not only using multiple informants, but also using multiple source of methodologies should be used. And then we should integrate this into our understanding of what has worked in the program and what has not worked in the program. Otherwise, we will be just stuck in our own vicious circle, and based on our egoistic ideas, we will try to develop our programs with all good intentions, but we will not be able to achieve anything close to Volkswagen Golf, which is a sad story. But I'm hopeful. Things are progressing, so publishing registered reports, that's a great development. Open access, that's a great development. Eurofam network, that's a great development. All these doctoral students coming from different disciplines, different countries, thinking about the same thing, that's a wonderful development. I think the future is going to be much brighter, only if we are aware of what are the limitations that we are engaging in at the moment. Thank you.
We have time for 1, 2 questions the most.
I thought that 1 hour is a torture for me, but it wasn't the case. Sorry.
You have really things to say. In any case, we have coffee break now to chat with him and ask him anything you would like.
But Patty, I think that she had something. So if you have time, was for 1 or 2.
I was really triggered by your mentioning of setting explicit goals, right? And then there is some kids that do that. So do you think we should? Should we say, okay, we want children out of home placement to be reduced by 20% in 20 years or something like that? Should we set such goals for our field, do you think? Or is the world too unpredictable, maybe more so our world compared to the world of cars for such criteria?
It's a very difficult question because we need to experiment. Like these kind of businesses have been setting goals and revising these goals because they realize that it's not achievable. I think we should be flexible, but also we need to set some goals for us. Like for this parenting and the youth intervention that we are working with for the newly arrived people, we set some goals. And one of the goals is that this program should be easily implemented. It's a very important criteria because if you look into the field, there are a lot of arguments for multi-phased, multi-component programs that should integrate community involvement, different stakeholders. But come on, this is so difficult to implement. So we should test things slowly, step by step. So we said this program should be easily implemented. So we should target the whole development process and the evaluation process in a way that it is going to maximize the implementation ease. So that's one of the important goals. And another important goal is that we said we are not going to see our target group as victims because these people are potent people, they have a lot of resources, and we should build up on their resources. So the overall idea was developed based on this premise. And also we said, by the end, if the program is found effective, this is going to be made available for free. These 3 goals. I think these 3 was just enough at this step. So in the next step, if we can survive the RCT and show some program effectiveness, then I will add another goal. Okay, the next evaluation is going to compare this program to what other programs are available in the field. And then we can gradually add more and more that we could achieve and understand very clearly that, okay, is this achievable or not? But otherwise, we will just repeat ourselves.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.